Hello everyone and welcome back to another edition of the SBK Betting Podcast, and we are going to ask everyone to readjust their seatbelts as we are buckling in for the return of the flat season. Yes, the flat turf action is back. It's in all its glory. And personally, I don't think it's come around too quick at all. I've had enough of the jumps, thanks. Let's get back to the straightforward stuff, where we don't obsess over one festival, where we have plenty of good competition from both sides of the Irish Sea and internationally, and horses happy to run very regularly. And pleased to see, I saw a bit of a smile there come from TC. I'm sure you're delighted to have it back. And even Ross is as well a little bit. We've had enough of the politics. Let's just get into racing. That's what we do this for year after year. And it does feel a bit earlier, but as I said, TC, I think we've been waiting for this and we deserve to just jump straight back into it.
Absolutely. I've been injecting myself with turf racing at Gulfstream Park over the winter, just looking for some kind of grass flat action. So yes, I'm very happy to see that Doncaster's back this weekend. Unfortunately, because of the schedule, we then have a huge gap between the proper season starting and actually this weekend. It's just a bit ludicrous. You feel like you kind of go for it and then you've got to take a pull and watch some jumps racing again, which I'm not a fan of, but I am a fan of this weekend. I'm looking forward to watching the Lincoln.
Yeah, they're flirting with us, aren't they? They're just giving us a little bit of something. But we do have Dubai, and I'm sure you'll be watching that. So international flat fans will be able to watch a lot of the best international horses from all over the globe at Dubai the week after next. But let's focus on this weekend. And as TC touched on, it is the Lincoln. The handicap that is year after year attracted a lot of runners. We've got a maximum field of 22. We've got last year's winner, last year's second. We've got the winner from 2 years ago as well. So that's the likes of Awal, Johan, Migration. We've got some Irish performers in here as well. Last week, or should I say a couple of days ago's Irish Lincolnshire winner, Chazzesmee, is coming into this with a £5 penalty. Overall, TC, is it a good renewal in terms of the races we've seen over the years from the Lincoln?
I think it's a fair renewal rather than a good one. There aren't that many young and unexposed horses coming into the race with huge and sexy profiles. There are a couple, but not many. It's mainly the veterans that we're looking at there. I mean, you've mentioned two of them, the last two winners, Migration and Johan. Just a stat for you on Migration, two stats actually. Only two horses since 1985 have carried more than 9 stone 4 pounds to victory. Migration will need to defy that trend if he's going to win again. And only no horse has won back-to-back Lincolns since 1958. That was Babur, who won in 1957-58. So Migration, the chances of him winning again, I'd say is very slim based on trends, though he will have conditions. And then you've got Johan, who I actually put up in this race 2 years ago when SBK sponsored it, went off 50-1 or something similar to that. He just hasn't drawn very well, unfortunately, but he will go well fresh. They're your two recent winners. You've got Awal, who was well punted last year, made the front, and it's very difficult to make all in this kind of race, yet still ran very well in second. The handicap has been lenient with him since, and he comes back in off the same mark of 102. But again, he hasn't drawn great. So at his price, around 4-1, I've got to look elsewhere. And the obvious one to me is Liberty Lane for Carl Burke. Now, I was at Newmarket last April when this horse made his 3-year-old reappearance. He finished second. He was sent off favourite. And there was a big front-running bias that day at Newmarket. And he went to the front and got beat. So I was thinking, wow, that's probably a little bit disappointing, given he went into the race with just one victory from one race, and it was a 5-length romp. However, the winner was Reappearance, who subsequently came out, Royal Ascot, later in the season and won the Group 3 Hampton Court. So the form was given a good boost. Liberty Lane didn't really show his best all throughout last year. However, when he got soft ground at Doncaster, he showed lots of resilience, a real game attitude in the latter stages, and got that overdue victory towards the end of the season. Now, I'm putting a line through his last run because it clearly wasn't the right Liberty Lane. And if you go back through his record, he's now 2 from 2 on soft ground. I think he is the horse to beat in here, off the mark of 102, and he's got a good record off layoff. So Liberty Lane is going to be my number one selection. The other horse I'm going to have a few quid on is Thunder Bull. Now, he has a similar profile. He's a 4-year-old. 4-year-olds have won 11 renewals since the year 2000. He's also relatively unexposed, albeit not as unexposed as Liberty Lane. And he's also got a great record on soft. Technically, he is 2 from 2, but his record says 1 from 2 because he was disqualified from a race at Goodwood that he did cross the line in front and then got replaced into second. He's another one that I think is definitely going to take a step forward as a 4-year-old this year. And he could easily be the value player around 16-1. But I think Liberty Lane's the most likely winner. Thunderball's your each way alternative.
Okay, and Liberty Lane has been gelded. Thought that was quite something to note. Clearly, as you say, wasn't himself, but I was surprised to see first-time gelding. I sort of assumed that he'd already had been. Maybe they sort of were holding on hope that this horse would be at least a group performer at the best, but keeping will be running in these sort of genuine handicaps, and that might just help him. Did you think he was always have been quite a straightforward looking horse, and this might just actually help him in a big field like this?
Well, they did try him in the Dante. I think it was only his third run when they ran him there. So they obviously thought he had the capabilities of being a proper group performer. And then he was just a bit keen in a couple of races during midsummer last year. So maybe the gelding operation will see him settle down. And I think that would be key, because you don't want to pull when it's soft ground over the straight mile at Doncaster.
Yeah, and look, you touched on the draw, which you've got to suddenly remember that we have stalls with foot racing. We haven't had to worry about this for a while, but it is really prevalent for this race. However, Johan, wasn't he coming, and I need to remind myself, refresh my memory, stall 4, which is a bit of an anomaly in the last 10 years, isn't it? I don't know necessarily, we have to sort of remind ourselves how that race sort of panned out for him, because you have to think with the mighty Sylvester Sousa back, how he's going to sort of try and make his way through stall 12, which is slightly better. But as you said, the horses above him, Chazzesmee and Awal, are poorly drawn by all historical accounts. But Ross, you think that maybe being in 12, that might favour Johan, but if he can do it out of stall 4, 12 could make it even easier for him.
Yeah, no, I did go back to my Tom Collins notes of draw bias from last season, and I sort of had this draw as sort of the bare minimum, but it's the same stall that Migration came out of last year, so it does give him a bit of hope. And I just like his profile. I mean, won it for Haggis obviously 2 years ago off 102. Very lightly raced since then, just 5 starts. Won on debut for Jack Shannon at Goodwood. Beat the gatekeeper by a comfortable half length. Was giving him £11. Now only has to give him 6. Gatekeeper is shorter in the market. I struggle to fathom that out. And I think you can put a line through his final run at Redcar. It was over 7 furlongs. It was on lively ground. It's just not what he needs. And Jack Shannon hasn't had a lot of runners through the winter, and certainly hasn't in the last month. But in the last 14 days, had 4 runners, 2 winners. Clearly has the horses in good order. And Sylvester de Sousa, I think, is probably going to have a little bit to prove to himself, and perhaps a few others coming back to the UK. I think his agent's going to be working hard. I saw word this morning that he's quietly fancied for a sort of tilt at the Jockeys Championship. I sort of struggle to see that with the backing he's going to have. But if that's the case, they're clearly going to be doing a lot of work trying to get him on the best horses. I thought he would be well suited to this horse, and I think the horse is going to love conditions. So I take on board what TC says about the draw, but Migration did it last year. Johan can do it again this year. And then just one other, I wanted to try and find something that had race fitness on their side, because I think we saw it last year. Baradar came there, again, from a very poor draw, but came there looking like a very strong contender and just weakened out of it, having not had a prep run. So I went back and just had a look at some that run on the all-weather, and I thought Chuzzlewit arrives here off a mark of 88. He won off 86 on his final start on the all-weather at Newcastle. Did it, I thought, quite nicely on only his second start over a mile. It's been as high as 95, and he's quite lightly raced over this trip and on turf. I mean, only 5 of his 11 career starts have been on the grass. The ground is a slight concern. The one time he tried soft ground, by showcasing. The one time he's tried soft ground, he disappointed, but that was in the Coral Sprint Trophy over 6 furlongs. It was a deep race. That's not his sort of ideal conditions at all, as it transpires. And he's out of a pivotal mare, and I always think that gives you a little bit of a chance of going on the ground. So at big odds, with a couple of questions, but with race fitness on his side, I wanted to have Chuzzlewit with me as well.
Okay, so previous winner in Johan for Ross and Chuzzlewit at Liberty Lane, and a bit of Thunderball for TC. And with that in mind, having a bit of a race fitness on their side, I do think race fitness on the turf on their side is even probably even more of a benefit. Now it's a very quick turnaround for Chazzesmee. He's probably the talking horse, and he's got very short now, but he's a talking horse for a reason. I think this is a horse that's sort of dressed up for it as a handicapper, but he could be a group performer, and he's making up for lost time massively. He broke his pelvis when he was 3, and Fozzy Stack has worn kid gloves with him. He's done extremely well with him in the races that he's placed him in, and he seems to have a real fondness for this very heavy going condition. Watched that race back at the Curragh last on Monday. He couldn't have done it more smoothly, really. But as TC says, he's poorly drawn in 3. So I think Joey Sheridan, who I can't imagine has got plenty of experience at Doncaster, is going to have to be at his best to try and sort of work his way through the field. But if he's a good horse, as good as he might be, he might just show his true talent. So I found it difficult just sort of to take Chazzesmee out of the equation for those reasons. And I'm with you as well, Ross, with Johan. He's such a likeable horse. He's a horse that they've clearly kept fresh, and he's at a pretty tricky handicap mark now of 106, so it's difficult to know where to really take him. So just to sort of keeping him fresh, which he clearly does so well at, was we saw him win at Goodwood for the first time. He only ran twice last year. His first run, he beat the gatekeeper at a massive price. So I'm happy to side with him as well. So a couple of agreements in terms of the Lincoln, and a couple of more each way likeable prices for that as well. But as I say, we've got more racing. There's plenty of it. We've got the first 2-year-old race on turf on these shores in the shape of the Brocklesby, and we've got some nice, interesting maidens as well as some more handicaps. We've got what else do we have? We've got things like the Camage Trophy, Baradars in there. So, as you said, TC, liking the look of this race day as a whole, probably found it quite difficult to select just a couple and nap and next best.
Yeah, I'm going to stick to Doncaster, of course, for both selections. I do just want to quickly mention the Brocklesby. I think there are 4 horses in there that were foaled in either January or February. The majority of the rest are March, April foals. Obviously, you would lean towards the older horse at this time of year. Dominic French-Davis's runner and Darrell Holland's runner. They would be the 2 that I would have a second look at when we get prices for that race. But obviously not including anything in the Brocklesby in the nap or next best. That would be quite foolish. So my nap is going to be the aforementioned Baradar in the 3 o'clock, the listed Camage Trophy. George Bowie, Ammo Racing. Ammo Racing often target these early turf flat races, and George Bowie is brilliant at getting horses fit. This horse had plenty of ups and downs in his career. He was Group 1 placed as a juvenile, then he just completely lost his form. Joined George Bowie last year and returned to something like his very best. He ran 3rd, as Ross said, in the Lincoln, shaped like the best horse in the race, but was drawn badly down the middle of the track, and Kevin Stott just made his move way too early, which meant he weakened in the latter stages. Then he had a couple of poor races, came back, won the International Handicap at Ascot, obviously a career best for the horse, and then bolted up over 6.5 furlongs at this venue. Now, I love the drop back to sprinting. He spent most of his career over 7 furlongs and a mile, but when you drop back to 6 furlongs on a straight track and testing conditions like this, your stamina will really prove vital in the latter stages. So hopefully, Baradar, who goes very well fresh, will make a winning reappearance in the 3 o'clock at Doncaster. My next best is going to be more of a left field selection, and it's in the 1 mile 2 furlong maiden, 4:10 at Donny. There are some horses in here from very good stables. I mean, Godolphin have got one. I think there's one from Hugo Palmer or Ed Walker in there that's got some nice form. There's a Cole Burke horse at the top that's also finished second on debut. But I'm interested in Wild Waves for trainer Andrew Balding. Don't know what price he'll be. I'm hoping around 8-1 or bigger. Don't know, maybe a little bit shorter. We'll see. However, this colt ran twice last summer, both at Sandown. First time up on quick ground, travelled really well through the race, over 7 furlongs, just got beat by 3 really nice types, and that form's worked out well since. Then he went back to Sandown on heavy ground, powered through the race. I mean, he is tanking with 2 furlongs to go. And like he did on the first start, he just hit a flat spot when they quickened up. Again, it was over 7 furlongs. And in between that 1.5 furlong, 2 furlong marker, just couldn't go with the leaders and again finished 4th. But he was strong at the line. Now, his pedigree screams distance. He just wants to go long. So I love the fact they're stepping him up to 1 mile 2. I think that's a huge positive. And Andrew Balding doesn't have too many runners at this time of year, especially on the turf. He may have 1 or 2 on the all-weather, but if you go back through his CV, that March statistic, you don't get many. It's definitely not a double-figure runners for the month anyway. So I'm interested to see that he's in this race. He also holds a sales entry at Gorham Park in June, a race that's worth €200,000. So I think they've got some big targets in mind with Wild Waves, and hopefully it'll go well at a decent price in the 4:10.
Yeah, he's by a jump sire in Crystal Ocean. He's only had a handful of runners on the flat. None of them have won yet, but interesting to see him stepping up in trip. And yeah, and also, as you say about the Brocklesby, I'm fascinated to see how the 2-year-old first season sires will do from a 2-year-old perspective. You've got Mohath there, you've got an Invincible Army, you've got a Without Parole. And, you know, you think about Without Parole, not exactly early. So an unusual selection of size sort of represented from that perspective. I can't really quite work it out. We've got to leave that in just a watching brief. But thank you for that, for the Napa Next Best from TC, from a good looking race card to pick from. Ross, got a Brocklesby pick for me?
Do you know what, Jess? I had a quick look through it. If you want to know, I did think Daryl Holland's horse was interesting. I take what TC says about
for a Dark Angel.
Yeah, and I just thought that the dominant French Davis horse, Amo Race Horses by Zoustar, I'd be surprised if heavy ground is what they would want in time. So if you wanted to lump mine and Tom's musings together, I would be with him with Daryl Holland's 2-year-old. But no, I am sticking with the jumps. I'm not quite ready to go full top hat just yet.
We thought we had done it. We thought this season had even made you want to get back to the flat.
Well, look, let's put it this way. I'm more excited about the flat than some people have been about the fallout from Cheltenham Festival, haven't I? So at least I'm smiling, not looking too miserable. But I've gone to Newbury for the jumps. The nap comes in the 3:15, and it's Alfie's Princess for Sam Thomas. Really like this mare, and I'm surprised actually that she hasn't got more ones next to her name. But I think she probably bumped into 2 really well handicapped horses at Sandown last time. Jinko Blue, who won it in impressive style, was considered good enough to go to the Grade 1 Gallagher's novice at the Cheltenham Festival. And okay, we know he ran no sort of race because of the Nicky Henderson form, but I still think you've got to take into consideration that Regardi's clearly held in. And Titan Discovery was 11 lengths ahead, but was in receipt of £9. He won next time out and won very cosily, and was then second again. And I think actually, in hindsight, it should be 2 wins. I think he was an unfortunate second, and given his time again, I think Liam Harrison would win on him. So he's up to a mark of 124. She's still on a mark of 119. I think she's a really talented mare. You could maybe take it as a slight negative that Sam Tristan-Davies has jumped onto Smiling Getaway in the same sort of joint ownership. But Lorcan Williams was absolutely brilliant on Golden Ace at the Cheltenham Festival. Schooled, I thought, Jack Kennedy and Paul Townend. He's no bad substitute at all. And personally, if you were asking me for a jockey, I would choose Lorcan over Sam from personal preference. So I think she's got a great chance. I think she'll like this better ground. She's going to stay very well. She's a bit of a price, but I thought a mark of 119 will definitely underestimate her. And then in the 210, another one at quite a decent price, the Jamie Snowden trained Indy Wood. Arrives here quite fresh compared to a few ahead of him in the market. Ran really well in the Grade 2 Dovecot behind Lump Sum and Fiercely Proud. He was the first off the bridle. He was off the bridle turning in and under quite strong pressure. But I loved how he stuck to it, and he really got his head down and battled. Winged 2 out and was staying on. He was never going to finish anywhere but third, but I think he'd have been much closer to Fiercely Proud. But Gavin Sheehan couldn't find a stride to the last, didn't want to put him on his nose, and sort of really powered down to the last, popped it, and then picked up again. And he found again going to the line. So I think a step back up to 2 mile 3. He's won at Plumpton over 2 mile 4. On a galloping track will suit him. He got dropped £2 for that, which I thought was a really fair move by the handicapper. And I think this trip, this track, this ground will really suit Indy Wood. And I'd be disappointed if he doesn't shake up those above him in the market.
Okay, yeah, good racing actually. To be fair to jump racing still. Malfi's Princess and Indy Wood, and on that, I was at the Skeltons today. I'm lucky enough to have a good chat with Dan about the Trainers' Championship. I do think that could be quite entertaining for the rest of the season. They are throwing every gun they have at every race they can find. They're going for it, the Skeltons, and they've got plenty of ammunition this weekend. So that could be quite entertaining to add to it. But Ross will be hoping Alfie's Princess and Indy Wood will be ahead of them anyway. But thank you for that as we continue on for the rest of the jump season. And I have to admit, I do have a jump selection myself, but it's actually in a bumper, so it kind of still sort of doesn't count. Anyway, but I have been waiting to see this horse because He is out of Sway, and Sway was responsible for 2 Cheltenham Festival winners last week, Limerick Lace and I Know the Way You're Thinking. And my way of thinking for Gavin Cromwell put up a really big impression when second at Leopardstown during the Christmas period. And I just think this horse is bred to, be pretty smart, pretty useful. I don't know what price he'll be. It doesn't look like a complete walkover. He's got some good horses in this field, but I think he's one I'll definitely be following anyway. So I'm hoping that my way of thinking can follow on from that good run first time out. And then my next one, I am actually going to be taking on TC in that maiden stakes at Doncaster, the 410, because I was really taken by Harper's Ferry, who is out of an Oaks winner in talent by Lope de Vega. Was second first time out to one of my horses to follow for the season in Feigning Madness at Newmarket at the back end of the season on pretty soft ground. Went off at 50-1 that day, so was completely overlooked and was the second string of the Ed Walker pair. But I think they were pleasantly surprised. He's going to step up and trip now. He, as TC's quite right, he said, this could be a pretty strong race. He's got a Derby entry, but, Ed Walker's pretty good with horses of this ilk. We know what happened to the likes of Waipero and where they went on to. So just keep in mind his sort of 3-year-olds. He's got a really nice bunch of horses, and I just think Harper's Ferry could be one of them. So we'll take TC on at my peril on the first weekend of the flat season. We do have plenty to look forward to. We can enjoy that, and then we'll have to return because we do have Aintree coming up, and as well as plenty more action from a jumps perspective. So I'm sure we'll have lots to focus on. I'm sure we'll do some more sort of flat horses to follow at least at some stage too. TC Dubai next week, surely that will be in your mind. Still got plenty going on from an American perspective as well. So lots to read from your column this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to be sticking to the UK stuff this week, but as you say, looking forward over the next couple of weeks, I'll be all over Dubai, the Florida Derby next Saturday as well. The Kentucky Derby's not too far away either. So, I'll be sticking to the flat stuff. Don't worry, I'll keep an eye on the jumps racing just for this podcast purposes. But, I'm flat, all steam ahead now.
And Ross, before we leave you, we want to know, where does Roger run next?
Still a bit up in the air, Jess. Possibly Ayr in April the 20th, I think it is. There's a 2-mile 4 novice. So if all is well, you might go there. But I'm going to speak to Richard this weekend, and we'll make a bit of a plan for him. But spring grass won't be too far away, whatever he does.
Well, I think that we should have an SBK family outing. We'll talk to the bosses. Let's get a trip up to Ayr. I think that'll be good, great crack. Okay, guys, thank you for joining us. Always brilliant to have thoughts about the flat and the jumps at this time of the year. Don't forget, all new SBK users who've joined us after potentially having picked up on the podcast during the Cheltenham Festival, you get £30 in free bets when you sign up and bet £10 for the first time. Head to SBK for lots of offers and content promotions as well throughout the weekend, and we shall see you next week.